attack. Now, ISAF put out a report saying they believe they'd killed 30 Taliban fighters, which could mean that many civilians were also caught up in this attack, and an investigation has been launched into how many of those dead were indeed civilians. The governor's also told us that many of those who were injured in the operation and taken to the capital hospital were women and children. Now, the attack comes just a day after the Taliban launched a separate attack in the neighbouring province of Nangarhar in Jalalabad. The attack was on the Kabul bank by 7 suicide bombers. 2 who managed to detonate their vests, 5 were killed before they could do so. The bank at the time was full of government employees, local police collecting their wages. So far, we're told that 40 were killed and another 70 people were injured.
In the United States state of Wisconsin, there's been a 5th day of rival protests. Supporters and opponents of a new law to reduce the power of trades unions are on the march. The state's Republican governor says the bill's necessary to avoid painful jobs cuts. Opponents say public sector workers will see their wages and benefits cut along with their bargaining powers. If the contentious legislation is passed, it could encourage other states to adopt similar laws. In Guatemala, the vice president of a football club has been shot dead after receiving death threats over his team's poor performance. Police say Carlos Gomez was killed by 2 men waiting for him as he left a team meeting. His team, Deportivo Zinabajul, is bottom of Guatemala's National League. In Venezuela, a group of students continuing their 2-week-long hunger strike, demanding an inquiry into human rights abuses. They say the government's been using judges and prosecutors for dirty tricks against the political rivals of President Chavez. The U.S. is backing the students' demands. Venezuela's foreign minister is telling the U.S. not to interfere. Well, President Chavez is having a little bit of readjustment to do to a new political reality. For the very first time, in a long time at least, the opposition has the power to stop his often controversial proposals. Craig Marrow reports from the capital, Caracas.
Enthusiastic supporters accompany Hugo Chavez into what is unfamiliar territory for the Venezuelan president. This is the opening session of the National Assembly, Venezuela's legislature. For the first time in years, an opposition coalition has enough seats to block government legislation. Unusually for Venezuelan politics, there have been few fireworks so far, as committees begin hammering out the year's agenda.
People don't want the National Assembly to turn into a polarized political space. They want it to be a lawmaking institution for issues like housing, jobs and security. The whole country voted so that we work to solve their problems.
Chavez's 12-year rule has deeply polarized Venezuelans. The president maintains a large, though slightly weakened base of supporters, especially among the poor. In December, the outgoing assembly, controlled by Chavez's Socialist Party, pushed through an 11th-hour decree that gave the president emergency powers for 18 months. That enables him to bypass the new legislature on several key issues. The opposition called it a ploy to weaken the new assembly that took office in January. But Chavez says he needs the powers to deal with unprecedented floods and rains that struck last year.
We've seen a petty attitude among some opposition members who want to deny the rights of the people and overrule the rights of the previous assembly.
Flores was the president of the last assembly, which passed a slew of laws to deepen what the president calls a 21st century socialist revolution.
Chavez began the year with a somewhat conciliatory tone. He refused to sign a controversial university law that had angered the opposition, and he even suggested that he might give up those decree powers. However, since then, he has backtracked, saying he may even seek to get the powers expanded.
As Chavez and the opposition adjust to Venezuela's new political reality, the streets of Caracas, so often the scene of mass protests in recent years, seem calm for the time being. If recent history is any judge, however, it is probably just a matter of time before that changes. Craig Morrow, AlJazeera, Caracas.
Coming up in sport, it's only day 2 of the World Cup, but New Zealand have made history. In India, Farah will tell us what they managed in just a moment.
In a new series of one-hour documentaries, AlJazeera English showcases films from across the AlJazeera network.
We are now heading in towards Palestinian waters.
Two small boats set out from Greece to challenge the siege of Gaza. A dangerous act of defiance in the face of injustice.
They're only trying to scare us.
An extraordinary act of solidarity with the Palestinian people.
AlJazeera World at this time.
Information travels in many ways. Opinions constantly formed. Knowledge passes in an instant.
If you want to communicate with those shaping the headlines, this is your chance to ask questions directly to the people making the news. Riz Khan, at this time on Al Jazeera.
China has a growing elderly population, and as a consequence of its one-child system, there are fewer younger people to take care of them. It's a responsibility that often falls to the state. Private retirement homes offer an alternative, but independence comes at a price, financially and emotionally. Faces of China, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Sports time now. Farah's here.
Thank you, David. Well, we start with football, and Lazio have closed the gap on third-place Napoli to 1 point in Italy's Serie A. Lazio won 1-0 against bottom club Bari. Anderson Hernandez with this superb volley after just 6 minutes. Third-place Napoli are in action in the late game. Meanwhile, Juventus got off to the worst possible start in their match against Lecce. Captain and goalkeeper Gianluigi Buffon was sent off for handling the ball outside of the penalty area. The home side made use of the extra man by going ahead after 30 minutes. Jamil Mesbah slipping the ball under the replacement keeper. And Lecce made it 2-0 when Andre Bertolacci scored from close range. And despite having a man sent off as well, they held on for the win. Now, there were 7 other matches being played in the Italian league. League leaders AC Milan look likely to seal the points away at Chievo. Alexandra Pato with the late goal there to make it 2-1. Genoa have staged an amazing fight back against visitors Roma. They were 3-0 down after 50 minutes, but have come back to lead 4-3. Inter Milan are now just 2 points behind Serie A leaders and city rivals AC Milan after they beat Cagliari 1-0. Inter's revival under coach Leonardo continued thanks to Hussein Khawaja's 7th-minute strike. It's their 9th win in 13 matches since the Brazilian took over from Rafa Benitez. To Spanish football, and Jose Mourinho is now 9 years unbeaten in home league matches as a manager after his current Real Madrid side brushed aside Levante on Saturday. Karim Benzema and Ricardo Carvalho scored Real's goals in a 2-0 victory.